Iiasa is a key partner in the Global Assessment Report 2013. Our team is essentially global as well. We have Stefan Hochreiner-Stiegler, we have Keith Williges, Anna Timonina, Georg Flug, and myself, Reinhard Mechler. Our contribution as a report is global, but we focus on certain hotspot regions and countries. The key region we're discussing today is Central America and Honduras. Honduras in 1998 experienced Hurricane Mitch, which was a devastating event. It killed about 6,000 people and affected another 600,000 people. The economic aftermath was also massive. $2 billion losses, which amounted to, if you measure it in GDP, to about 80% of the losses. So this is considered a 100-year event. Of course, this means such an event on average happens every 100 years, but it could happen every day. And so for us, it's very important to understand such events in terms of risk, to really understand the chances and frequency of other events and the losses that are associated with that. So Stefan, what did you find out, given the information that you received from other partners in the consortium? What did you find out about Honduras and its disaster risk?
Well, the Global Assessment Report, and especially the colleagues from Latin America, were providing us with detailed data about the probability of damages happening in these regions, in these different country regions. And for example, for Honduras, we were able actually to get this direct risk measures, so a loss distributions where we can actually simulate from this loss distribution possible events. So we use this kind of data then actually for our modeling approach, the CATSIM, this catastrophe simulation model, and we are combining this kind of data, so this direct losses, with the ability to finance the losses. And the next slide here, for example, shows this for some countries here, a 100-year event, loss event, which happens on average every 100 years. For Honduras, you see here, there's a big red bar. That means basically the government is not able to finance these losses of a 100-year loss event. We also have this seen in the past, but you can also see here what kind of losses can be financed by savings, for example, and which of these losses cannot be financed, which is causing then actually these indirect effects. And we have done this for several countries, but what does this mean? Probably Georg wants to tell us more about this.
Well, we use CATSIM as a simulation model, simulation methodology. And this simulation model is based on a scenario approach. So we simulate a lot of different scenarios for the possible development of the GDP based on our macroeconomic model. And then we can not only project possible future development of the GDP, but also check whether these projections were accurate for the past. And for instance, this slide shows us that among all these scenarios we considered for the development of the GDP in Honduras, the actual path of the GDP, which was affected heavily by Hurricane Mitch, was among those we have simulated. So we somehow find that there's kind of verification of our scenario model by the reality.
But there are some scenarios that are even worse, actually, than...
Yes, they may happen. They may happen. Unfortunately, they may even happen bigger events than this one given by Mitch. So there's still a problem of very, very severe events, and we have to think about risk measures to mitigate or to manage those risks.
Yeah, what can we do?
Yes, one of the main questions of our research concerns the risk pooling. And we consider the Central American countries who are considering the possibility of coming into the risk pool during the past years. And we are considering these countries, and we would like to know whether there is some scenario under which these countries will not be able to finance their losses anymore. And considering the loss probability distribution of these countries, we are able to find the size and the year of the event with which these countries will not be able to finance the losses. So, for example, for Honduras, 33-year event will lead to the fiscal gap of this country, and Honduras will not be able to financially cover their losses of the 33-year event. Considering the RIFCA countries together, we are able to show the variability of the growth path. And we can see that the growth path of the RIFCA pool will be much more stable than the growth path of the separate countries into this RIFCA pool. And this is one of the benefits of the pool.
Interesting results for Central America, which is a region that is really considering pooling risk across governments and countries. At the same time, there's many other regions in the world that are doing similar things, particularly the Caribbean region, Africa, Eastern Europe, and also Pacific. And Keith, you did some global risk mapping. And
yes, as you can see from our next slide, we did try to focus on more of a global level and determine the resource event gap years, or finance gap years, at which a country would no longer be able to finance a disaster event. And you can see some interesting trends, including a bit of a north-south difference, and countries which would traditionally have very large losses are actually at rather low vulnerability in our assessment to a financial gap, such as, per se, the United States. Whereas other countries are much closer to the red or 100-year events, or even lower, 25-year events or lower, closer to the equator.
Very interesting, and this is really like exciting work that we will take forward as we continue to work with the global assessment team. And I guess the next report is 2015, so there's a lot of work for us to be done, and that's really exciting. Great, thanks a lot for this good presentation.